If you work for the Catholic Church and want to transform the culture of your parish and put more souls in the pews, we are here to help. I'm John Konz, and this is the Catholic Ministry Professionals Podcast, your favorite leadership development podcast for Catholic churches. Each week, you can expect engaging discussions like today, expert interviews also like today, and actionable advice like today to help you move Jesus' mission forward in your parish. Today, I'm joined by Heidi Indahl with Designed for Discipleship. Heidi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, John. It's great to be here.
Well, it is good to have you on here. Your husband couldn't join us, but he's part of this with you. Tim, we're thinking of you. We're praying for you. We love you. And hopefully we'll maybe get you guys back on another time and he can join us. But I know a little bit about you and what you do, Heidi. But why don't you go ahead and for our listeners' sake, tell them kind of who you are, what is Designed for Discipleship, and also just kind of how you guys got here.
Yeah, great. Like you said, my name is Heidi. My husband's name is Tim. We have been in the field of education since the very beginning, since we met. Between the two of us, I started adding up years, and it's crossed half a century for the two of us, which is kind of in the same field together working. We were working kind of in our separate spaces. I worked more on the early education, parent-family education side, curriculum development, program administration. My husband has a PhD in educational psychology. He works in higher education right now at a small private Catholic college. He's also done a ton of work with a research institution on science education and just a whole bunch of fun stuff. So kind of what Design for Discipleship is it's that and how that has formed our perspective on the human person and how they learn through this scientific process and what that means for our faith. It has become, over the course of our careers, increasingly obvious that to us that the brain was designed by God, and it was designed by God for a purpose, to give us, intellect and knowledge and all these things that we these great gifts that we use in service of our relationship with Jesus. And in that, as modern neuroscience has continued to grow and we've learned more about how the brain works, we started to see both the holes in the ways that good educational theory was maybe not being used in teaching and sharing the faith with others, but also the ways that the actual faith side was kind of just being kept separate. Like, we go to catechesis over here and we go to mass over here. Some families maybe don't, but we kind of keep them separate. And we just, over time, just became increasingly convinced that these two things belong together. God designed our brains. He designed them in a particular way for a particular purpose. We know that we are designed for relationship with God. That's very clear through the scriptures. It's very clear through all of our Catholic teaching that we know and love. And we just started thinking, what would happen if we started bringing it together intentionally? And so Design for Discipleship was born years before we ever started using the phrase. In fact, I like to say that the people who helped us develop it, that helped us clarify it, have no idea. They would have no idea what I was talking about if I said the phrase Designed for Discipleship to them, despite the fact that we taught them using it, right? So I think there's just been a little bit of a really fun blossoming and maturing of the concept and the idea, especially over the last 5 years. What happened around the time of COVID is people really started asking for this. I think people started seeing they didn't want to go back to what they were doing before in faith formation. And so people started asking us to come in and give our education perspective to their faith formation work through catechist trainings, through some curriculum development, through some mentoring, through, just kind of general consulting type things. And we did. And it was very powerfully received. It was, it actually shocked both of us. We had a friend tell us that he thought in 5 years we'd be doing almost entirely this work. And the funny thing is without actually changing anything, that's exactly what's happened. It's now informing everything that we do personally and professionally in a really beautiful way. So I guess that's the kind of like long, complicated version. The simple thing is just design for discipleship is about being discipleship forward. It's about being driven by discipleship before other things, right? So you're thinking about discipleship not as okay, we have to teach this, and so maybe we'll do disciple, and then, oh, but we want to do relationship too. It's we want to form disciples, and what does that look like, and how are we going to make it happen? And that's first. It's discipleship driven, which makes it Jesus driven. And I think that's really kind of the nutshell of what keeps design for discipleship moving.
Yeah, it just as we've been talking, and as I've got your book here, The Proactive Catechist, and I was kind of reviewing that as well. And I think there's a gap there that you've identified that you're trying to step into, and that's, I've worked in Catholic schools and I've worked in Catholic parishes, and so on the Catholic school side, you have often people who are excellent teachers, but they haven't been trained how to disciple. They haven't been trained how to share the faith, and so they feel like they have to kind of stay in their own lane a little bit. And then, maybe you've got a campus minister or a chaplain or someone, and it's his job to do the faith thing. But we're going to do our education excellently. And then on the other side, on the parish side, you have people who are maybe inspired by their faith, or they've been, had their arm twisted by their pastor, but now they're in a position of education. And they see that their main job is also education because they're just trying to impart this information. And so there's this gap there between the faith and the knowledge. And what you're coming up forward with is really the faith is the lens through which we approach the knowledge piece. And so I really appreciate that about you. I'm kind of wondering, was there a particular moment for you? You say it's kind of been percolating. It's kind of been under the surface all this time. But was there like a particular moment where you realized that this approach to discipleship and education was needed?
Yes. And it was the moment when I knew that I was the one who was being asked to do it. Beyond that, like, our catchphrase has kind of come to summarize our philosophy is quality education, authentic faith, periods after each. They are not in competition. They are synergistic. They work together. And Tim and I had gone to just a daily mass, and then we had with a friend who's a priest, and we stopped by his rectory after mass. We sat down, we had a cup of coffee. We're all just kind of sitting around as people who work in ministry do, and we're just kind of like lamenting the state of the church and the world and all the things. And we all know we do this, right? And so we're kind of just going on, and we're saying the research stuff, right? We're saying the observations we've made. We're saying the technical stuff. And he just looks at us and he says, "What would you do differently?" And I don't even really remember what I said, but I remember going home and being like, that was a terrible answer. I didn't have an answer to the question, because what he was really asking is, we come in on not a volunteer basis, but on a professional basis, on an ask for, we're not in the leadership positions. He was asking us, me as a priest in a leadership position, what should I be doing differently? And I didn't give him a good answer. And I knew it. And I couldn't sleep that night. I spent like all night sketching out what would I do differently, which kind of led me to this course of, well, I think to answer that question, we have to look at how we got here in the first place. And so that opened up one area of research that kind of has informed a lot of what we do now and what became the formal Design for Discipleship system. We like to call it a system because it's not a curriculum. It's not even a program. You can't just buy it and put it in front of people. You actually have to learn it and let it transform you and the way that you instruct and the way that you lead. And then it becomes a system of thinking and of planning and designing instruction or designing ministry that changes the priorities that is given to discipleship in the brain. So there was an actual a friend just looking at me, and I knew from that, and that was about 4 years ago. And since then, it's just been so, like, every day is just more and more confirmation that this is what the Lord wants us doing, and he wants us to be unapologetic about the quality education, authentic faith. He did this. He put our brains together this way. He wants us to use them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% get that too, because my journey into Catholic ministry professionals, there's a specific conversation that it kind of came down to where it was like, oh, this is the decision point. Like this is where everything hinges on this moment right here. And it was a conversation with my wife, actually, because I had just had a conversation like you, sitting with a friend in ministry and complaining, lamenting the state of things. And I was reporting back to Brooke at the end of the night and saying, well, yeah, they seem to be like, they're really frustrated. She goes, why? She stops. She goes, why do you and your friends, your ministry friends, always complain about their jobs? You work for Jesus. It should be the best job in the world. And it was just this moment of like, yeah, why do we feel so bad for ourselves instead of feeling like we're doing the most important work in the world and that we're thriving and succeeding in it? And it was just kind of this moment where that's what I want for them, is to be able to thrive, to succeed, to bear more fruit, and just started this spiral of the brain that launched into what I do now with Catholic ministry professionals. So I'm wondering, with all of this that you guys are working on and that you're sharing, and as you're teaching people, a lot of parishes already have catechetical programs in place. Kind of that same question that Father asked you then is like, how does your approach differ? What would you do differently with traditional catechesis, or I know you work with schools as well. How does it differ? What are some of those common misconceptions they have maybe? How does it differ?
So the fundamental way it differs is that it isn't a curriculum. It's a system of planning and designing instructions centered around the goal of mature discipleship. And in that, it has a framework of 4 key principles with matching teachable processes that anyone can integrate into ministries. When I ask people to tell me about their program, the first thing they always tell me is what curriculum they use. And I am here today to tell you it doesn't matter what curriculum you use. They are effectively all the same.
That'll
There
preach.
are
Thank you so much for saying that. Because people spend hours and thousands of dollars looking at these things.
the
And
curriculum
they're
is
the
not
same
going to
thing.
solve your problem. It's just not going to solve your problem. What solves the problem that you have is converting hearts. And that's what Design for Discipleship is about. It's about respecting each individual's journey of discipleship, whether that is the kindergartner or the first grader or the second grader who's never even been to Mass since their baptism, whether it's the family that's sitting in the front row every single day, whether it's the leaders that are providing direction behind the scenes. This is literally designed to respect the discipleship journey of each and every individual in the parish. And people are like, well, how do you do that with one program? The program is Jesus. We don't do it with a program. Jesus does it. It's the way we design our programs in a way that's respectful of that really makes the difference. I like to say that what we're doing is not the work. What we're doing is opening up more room for the Holy Spirit to do his work. So we're not actually the ones that are creating the conversion. We're just giving more room for the Holy Spirit to interact and encounter people in a way that's meaningful and systematic and works with the way the brain already wants to learn. The brain wants to connect everything it does to everything else it does. It's kind of like a fundamentally lazy organism. It uses so much energy just to keep us alive that it tries to conserve energy wherever it can. And so if the life of faith is disconnected from everything else that you're doing, the brain puts it in a pocket. I've heard people describe it as a trophy or a cup they take down and polish on Sunday mornings or Christmas and Easter. The brain is perfectly happy to do that. However, the brain would also be perfectly happy and functioning and work in this place of peace when everything it does is connected to the life of discipleship, when it understands how Jesus is with it in every single day and every single moment. And that's not like a subject we teach. It's just an opportunity that we invite people to through this system of intentional formation.
So you mentioned that as a part of that, it's a 4-part framework. Can you walk us through what are the 4 parts? Just the
Absolutely.
brief overview.
Well, the 4 parts are kind of key philosophical things that we believe transform programs. The first principle is to begin with the end in mind. So when we say begin with the end in mind, that's where we're saying the goal is mature discipleship. And we want people to lean on that hard. We want people to enter into a systematic period of prayer and discernment and visioning. Very similar, actually, I've also read your book, and very similar actually to what you propose in your as your first step for transforming parishes. It starts with prayer, but also with this clear vision. Um, Discipleship is a definable thing, but it doesn't look the same for everyone. And I think this is a little bit of our American culture desire to put things into very nice, clean, neat boxes. We sometimes are hesitant to say, in this community, we are really focused around the Eucharist, and mature disciples in our parish are very Eucharistically focused, or they're very service oriented, or sometimes you get a bad rep for parishes that are so-called social justice parishes. They get kind of a bad rap, which is not fair. We should not do that. But what does discipleship look like? So for students in a school, what do the graduates of our school look like if they're living as mature discipleship? What do they know? What can they do? What do they understand? How does that transform them as individuals and the choices that they make? What questions are they asking themselves? I mean, we're all asking ourselves every single day, or should be, what God is asking of me today. And for young people, there's a particular way that we want them to be asking, what is God asking me to do for the rest of my life in terms of vocation, and looking at, how they're going to serve Jesus and live in friendship and relationship with him for the rest of their lives. What does their prayer life look like? What does their life of service look like? What does their family life look like? And getting really clear about what that vision, I call it putting out the frame. Like, what is the frame that we want to draw this picture inside of our program? So what's the frame? So let's begin with the end in mind. That's the first principle. And then there's several kind of processes that we go through as a part of that. The second principle is comprehensive program evaluation. The number one mistake that we see parishes make is that they do not go back far enough. They start with a new curriculum. They purchase a new curriculum, a new program, a new initiative, but they never really deeply dive into what the starting point is and what are the components of a program. So you kind of have this path. You have these people and you want to take them on a journey. You want to bring them something. You want to teach them something. You want to expose them to something new, build this relationship with Jesus, increase their discipleship. And most of them have some sense of that end goal, but very, very few take the time to really establish, where are we right now today? And then really dive into, what do we need to move them from here to there? I kind of liken it to grocery shopping without a list or knowing what's in the cupboard. And you don't have a menu, and so you just go to the store, and you're going to spend too much money, and you're going to spend too much time, and it's going to be disorganized, and you might not eat very well that week. But if you make a menu and you check your cupboards, and then you go to the store, you can be faster, you can save money, you're be more efficient. It's going to be, frankly, more enjoyable, right?
It just sounds like me shopping in my single days as a backside.
Right?
Sorry. That's why I was smiling on this. Yeah.
Somebody always laughs at the grocery store analogy. I'm glad it resonates because we all know it, right? It's very practical. It's very down to earth. We experience that, but we do it in ministry all the time. We skip the step of seeing what's already in the cupboard. We implement programs that we don't have the resources to match. So in that comprehensive program evaluation, there's the starting line that we evaluate, but we also evaluate, what is our existing program right now? What do we have in our human resources? What are our human resources? If we don't have enough catechists, maybe we need to reorganize the classes to use mixed ages to make better use of the catechists we do have. Maybe we don't have space. Maybe we have too much space. We're trying to spread out and we're spreading ourselves too thin. And then we look at each of these categories of human resources, physical resources, and then curriculum. Technically, curriculum is a physical resource, but I pull it out because I don't even want to talk about it until we've talked about the other two. Because influencing human resources we can do through training, through education, through volunteer recruitment, through forming mature disciples in adults. We can influence that regardless of what our pockets say, regardless of what our balance sheet says. Physical resources require money to change most of the time. Sometimes we can fundraise for new art supplies, right? If the classrooms need snacks and we don't have snacks, we can probably do a drive for that. But if we're lacking a significant amount of space, or we have particular time constraint. One thing that kind of comes into, and this is schools, but then also we have a couple rural school parishes in our diocese still that have school release time. So their timing is not flexible, and they have to make the program fit into a particular time and space. And that's a restraining factor for them that they can't change. So we have to look at those things in our planning and not shoot ourselves in the foot by planning for things that can't be successful with the human and physical resources that we already have. So we just have to get very real about the starting line. And so that's the second principle in the area of the 4 principles. So we begin with the end in mind, comprehensive program evaluation. And the next is we plan a path. We build the bridge from A to B, from the starting line to the end. And we do that using quality education methods, which is the third principle. We want to make sure we don't drop people in the middle of the bridge. We might have the best program in the world, but if it starts in the middle of the bridge, who cares? So we're going to build connections one step at a time. We're going to go through the process. Here is where the people in my parish are, and this is how we're going to bring them. This is the one thing they need right now. The one thing they need first, and then in order to live that life of mature discipleship. And then how is the best way to teach them? We've done a lot of work that it's probably too much to get into the whole thing here, but a lot of work about the way the brain learns over time changes. And so therefore the best way to teach over time changes. And the best way to help kids answer those questions, teaching a child under the age of 6, between the ages of 6 and 12, 12 to 18, and 18 to 24, teaching those ages of children how to pray is a different process. So we really lean into teaching people what these quality education methods can look like, how to systematically ask questions, how to enter into imaginative prayer, and how to do that regardless of what curriculum you're using. I mean, we do as part of quality education methods when we teach the full system. We do include how to work with a curriculum, how to make adaptations, what are good adaptations, what are not, what are kind of the things to highlight, because we all know, and we've known since we are in school, you don't start the curriculum on day 1 and finish it on day 180 perfectly. There's always things that get skipped. There's always things that are made. But I think we tend to approach faith formation like we start day 1 on page 1 and we go as far as we can get. But when you make these kind of assessments in the beginning, it allows us to say, okay, but these are the sections of the book that are most important for what our students need most. And so we're going to use this curriculum that we've used for 25 years, but we're going to use it a little bit differently than we've used it in the past. We're not going to invest into a brand new. I actually haven't worked with a parish yet that went and reinvested in an entirely new curriculum. Some have taken the primacy of the curriculum and dropped it way down where they're using it way less. But nobody has worked with me and then invested, that I know of. Maybe they did after I left, but none that I know of have invested in a new curriculum as a result of the process. It's learning how to use the curriculum better, because we're giving curriculum designed by educators, because the curriculum companies are hiring educators to do this. They're hiring teachers and people who know what they're doing in terms of creating these things. They have different philosophies and styles, and that's all real, but we're giving them to people that don't know how to use them. So sometimes it's that simple as training. So that's quality education methods. And then the last is to go back to discipleship. It's to be evangelically focused for the entire family. How are we driving discipleship? How is discipleship the focus at every single step along the way? How are we going to measure it? How are we going to know? What's it going to look through? What breakthroughs are going to come? What are we looking for? What do we want to be different? And so we're intentional, not just about looking for that discipleship in the beginning, but cycling back to it to make sure that we stayed focused on it all the way through, so much so that we actually sit down and talk about the measures we're looking for as markers of maturing discipleship. It's always I kind of like to emphasize that. We're not looking to create everyone to be a mature discipleship tomorrow. What we're want is everyone to be a maturing discipleship. The goal is mature discipleship, but that's not our job. Our job is to help everyone enter into a journey of maturing discipleship.
I really appreciate that that you said that, because when I was running a confirmation program, this was something that really chagrined me is that they would say they're ready for confirmation when they know the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, and when they know blah 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 blah. I mean, like the 15 things they have to know to be ready for confirmation. But like when you go to the documentation, when you go to the church sources, you go to canon law and all that stuff, it doesn't say that they need to be able to pass a confirmation test. It says that they need to have an understanding of what they're approaching, like of what they're trying to receive, and they have to have a desire to receive it. And that to me is it's a much healthier threshold to walk through versus have you learned the 10 things? Have you learned the 15 things? It's no, like, do you understand what it is you're approaching and do you desire it? Because as soon as you do that, you have a moment where the heart can say, I want this, right? Versus, do you know this? And they're just it's a kind of a subtle difference sometimes, even internally to discern that. But they're two different things. So I'm wondering, as you've worked with a lot of parishes, individuals, schools, teachers, what kind of breakthroughs do you see? What do you hear them saying when they begin to live this out? As you begin to even as you begin to share this with them, what do you see kind of clicking in their brains, the breakthrough that speaks hope into their lives?
Well, I would say that on the first thing is exactly hope, especially on the school side. People are very hungry to change the conversation around Catholic education. They're
Mm,
very, very hungry. They see, I think they see the disconnect and they want to bring it back. And this gives them hope in a way to do that. They see the disconnect between the school life and the parish life. They see um, the percentage of Catholic students in our schools consistently decreasing in a lot of places. And they want to do something different. They're hungry to change the conversation. Um, they're one of the things that Tim has been working on as part of his job recently is actually what it means to be a Catholic educator. Like, what are the qualities of a Catholic education major or a Catholic education or a Catholic teacher should have. And it's looking at a lot of things like the virtuous formation of the teacher. And he's actually teaching 2 courses this semester that are brand new to him. And the response has just been phenomenal to even from these college students that are drawn to thinking about what it means to be an educated human being, thinking about what it means to bring Catholic themes into everyday instruction. One of the really neat things that's happened in some of the education courses at his university is actually there is a joined seminary at the college he works at, and seminarians are actually flocking to his courses, which makes us so excited to see these young men who are interested in discerning whether God is calling them to the priesthood, and they are seeing that this would be helpful, which we talk to priests all the time who are like, I don't, I got my first assignment and I was dropped in a Catholic school and I had no idea what to do because I'd never been taught anything about the brain or how it learns or human development or any of those things in the practical, in the physical, in the spiritual side of yeah, they had talked about human spiritual development, they had talked about disciples, but they had never learned anything about education. And so that's kind of on the school side. I would say that what's happening right now is a lot of conversations that are really building hope and really encouraging people that this is possible. So there's a lot of other people doing work on the Catholic school side, and I would love to see more collaboration among some of those people, because I think that would be really valuable. There's kind of every group has their organization, and I think that's even more divided in the Catholic schools than it is because they're dividing themselves by what approach they take. We're going to take this approach to learning, and we're going to take this approach to learning. When really, again, just like the curriculum, it's not about the approach is not the point. Jesus is the point, and discipleship is the point. So that's really in the education side. I'd say that the exciting thing we've seen is people responding to the invitation to do something different with great enthusiasm, very
mm,
great enthusiasm that people are responding to it. On the parish side, because we've been doing this more intentionally for 4 or 5 years now, um, we have a couple of people that we've been working with, again, since the very beginning, who didn't who were introduced to design for discipleship while the language was still in development, right? Now, Tim and I have done the work to standardize the language so we can talk about it and all those things. But initially, that wasn't the truth. That wasn't the case. We were teaching the principles, but we weren't using the language that we are using now. And I had two First Communions during First Communion season this year. I had two people that have been a part of Design for Discipleship from the beginning that gave me, to me, is the best feedback we could ask for. One was a faith formation director who told me, and she said, Heidi, every year when we have First Communion, I invite the students to volunteer to bring up the gifts. And every year I have these shy second graders, and I'm like, nobody wants to do it. Nobody knows how to do it. They don't want, they're like scared. They don't want to. She said, Heidi, when I asked them on their retreat who wanted to bring up the gifts, every single one of them raised their hands. They all wanted to be a part of that. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about this process and the desire, because my experience over and over again is that understanding increases reverence. It increases desire. As soon as you understand more, it has this increased meaning when it's connected to the sacramental life. This isn't happening separate from the sacramental life. It's happening because of the sacramental life, because of the graces that Jesus has for us in the sacraments. And so to see that faith formation director had that experience of like the students were learning in a new way. And what's really cool about that to me is that I didn't do any work with her on the sacramental prep side. The work I did with her was all on the actual faith formation program at that parish and on teaching this Design for Discipleship process and principles to her. And I don't even know if she could tell you how that came through in sacramental prep, because I don't think she did it intentionally. But those kids came into sacramental prep in a different place because of some of these changes that she had made, and probably she's made changes to the way she's doing the programming and teaching that she doesn't even realize she's made. But she saw the fruit, right? She saw the fruit in that way. And in the exact same way, I had a priest, again, who's been involved with us since the very beginning. Actually, he's the one who asked me the question, what I would do differently. And we've had several opportunities to work with a couple of different he's been in a couple assignments and work with a couple of different his parishes. And I take absolutely no credit for this, because this has all been his picking my brain and then going back. I haven't even really done mentoring. It's more been, he calls me and asks me questions and picks my brain, and then he goes back and does it. And he said to me, I just had First Communion, and for the first time in all the years of my priesthood, I recognized every single family. There wasn't a single family who showed up for First Communion this year that he didn't know. And I was like, that's the kind of results that I believe could only continue to grow. I believe those sorts of fruits where from the beginning we're starting to change the way we interact with people and the way we see them. We don't see them as just like these, like we're going to stuff a bunch of knowledge, like you're talking about your confirmation program. We're going to create a bunch of check marks that they have to walk through. We're going to form them as disciples instead. And I think that's those two examples, they're really coming through, and they're seeing that in a very concrete way, on something that's very stark for them.
I love that. So let's say a parish leader is listening to you share this fruit right now. How can they get in touch with you? What's the next step that they should take to begin moving in that direction?
Well, I think that's actually two very kind of different questions, because the first step they should be taking is obviously to pray, right? Like they need to lean into this. They need to just ask themselves, am I discipleship driven? Because if we're not discipleship driven, we're not going to be able to help other people learn how to drive that car, okay? We're just not. We're not going to have that kind of leadership if we're not ourselves discipleship driven. And this is just really asking, like, Jesus, what's possible here? I think I was going to pull it up before I sat down and I forgot, but there's a beautiful quote from Servant of God, Catherine Dougherty, about dreaming with God. And she calls them her dreams with God. And they're the things that Jesus brings from her heart to her mind, so they can reflect on them together, and then brings them back to her heart, where they can rest until he brings them back again. And I just think that's a beautiful way to think about it. Like, dream with God. What does he want for your program? What does he want for your parish? What does he believe is possible? It really doesn't matter what we believe is possible if he believes it's possible. And so that's like really the first and most important thing that they can do. So regarding how they can get in touch with us, they're welcome to email me. My email is Heidi@designedfordiscipleship.org. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy, uh, easy to do. You can also look at our website, designedfordiscipleship.org. We don't have a lot of information on there. I'll be the first to admit I'm not a web designer, and I don't have the knowledge, time, or skills or budget to hire someone else to do it for me. So I'm kind of faking my way through that part. And to be honest, we didn't need it for a long time. This work really tends to come a lot of word of mouth referral. And we are able to come in and we are able to actually teach this. We're in the process and we're like so close. We are so close to being ready to launch it, but I'll tell you about it. And if people are interested, they can email me an option for effectively what you were talking about a little bit before we turn the camera on about certifications through non-traditional means. We are very close to basically developing, we have it developed. We just haven't quite worked out all the kinks of the formatting. Basically a 9 to 10 month mentorship process that's like a cohort style. So instead of when someone hires me as a consultant, I come into their parish and I do this alongside them. And there's a lot of advantages to that. But I also see people kind of not take ownership of the thing in the same way because they're relying on me too much to provide the process for them. This certificate program was basically for anybody in any sort of ministry leadership. You could be a Catholic teacher who wants to learn about the evangelization and the theology side. It could be a theology major who's doing faith formation and doesn't know anything about how kids learn. It's kind of for both of those targets. It's to bring the quality education and authentic faith together into one certificate program that teaches the principles and the process with all the deep additions, all the keys of catechesis and the brain learning and the task breakdowns, all the educational stuff alongside all the thresholds of discipleship stuff, alongside the sacramental, we have to be faithful to the liturgy stuff, all together in one place. And we're going to be offering it online remotely next year for the very first time. We've only done face-to-face. We're going to walk beside you and help you build your program. For the first time next year, we'll actually be offering the opportunity for people that are not close by, who I can't come out in the same way to help them, the opportunity to learn this so that they can use it in ministry. The beautiful thing about this is it applies on a micro level and a macro level. You can look at an entire school or an entire parish through this lens. You can look at the journey of this is what we want our graduates to look like. This is most of our kids come in actually most Catholic schools, the kids are coming in preschool, not kindergarten. So they're coming in at this age and this is who they are here. And this is how we want to walk with them to graduation. You can do it at a school or a big parish level like that, but you can also do it. I use this message every single talk I give. And I run my head through it. I look at what they've asked me to say. I say, okay, who are my people? Where are we going? Where are we starting? What quality education methods can I apply in the next 30 minutes to make that go better? And how am I keeping it focused on Jesus all the way through? So it's something that can be applied at so many levels. And so we really want people to give people the opportunity to learn it deeply.
I really like that, especially you said the micro and the macro level, because yes, at school, yes, at the parish, yes, if you're going in front of a group and giving a talk, yes, in your home. And there was that great study that came out from the University of Notre Dame on a report on American Catholic religious parenting. And the thing that they found was that your child's reception of the faith and their decision to practice it in the future on their own has almost nothing to do with what they do at the parish, has everything to do with what you do at home. And what that's kick-started for me is then, and some of the stuff they go through as well, but I see how it lines up with your 4-part framework is essentially it comes down to your practice of the faith, like, and then your reflection on the faith, like, why am I Catholic? And then you're sharing the faith, like how you're going to share it and build a culture of faith in the home. And I see that as well in the 4 parts that you're mentioning, so that let's say you have a dumpster fire of a parish and you're in the middle of nowhere, rural town, USA, and you've got one really tired, checked out priest. That doesn't mean that your kids can't become thriving, holy, Catholic young saints. And if you follow this 4-part framework in your home, you can actually help them to see with a Catholic lens, even if the resources aren't there and you can't find it in your parish.
100%. And my background was in family education before I came into early childhood education and family education. You have jumped right into something I could spend a whole nother 45 minutes talking about, but I won't. But you're absolutely right. And that design for discipleship has transformed the way we parent as much as it's transformed the way that we teach. The method was there, the principles were there, the philosophy was there, the framework was there. But once we started defining it and pulling it into our every single day life in our parenting, it has changed the way we help our children make decisions. It's changed the way we look at the skills they need to be successful as mature disciples. We understanding that some of the things that we thought were really, really important or that are even highly valued in Catholic circles are not the places that we really want to be pouring.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have a relationship with Jesus. No one can live an authentic life of missionary discipleship without a personal prayer and relationship with Jesus. They just can't do it without personal prayer, without that relationship. And those pieces are so, I don't want to say they're more important, but they're more foundational. They're more foundational, and we have to start there. I think my example earlier of starting in the middle of the bridge, I think Catholic schools, parishes, and parents see what the end goal is and impose the end goal on people before they're ready for they start teaching, this is good, so I'm going to teach it here. When in reality, in the deep reality, before that's ready, we need the foundation, and the foundation is always Jesus.
Amen. Amen. Well, Heidi, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And for our listeners, you can reach out to Heidi at designedfordiscipleship.org, or you can just visit designedfordiscipleship.org and get in touch that way as well. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
You're very welcome.
All right. If you found today's conversation helpful, don't let it be just another good idea. Text this episode to a friend or a priest and start the conversation today. When you share the mission, your work becomes a movement. So you can get in touch with us at CatholicMinistryProfessionals.com to move from frustration to renewal today. And with that, we'll see you in the vineyard.